So we are back with another episode of Sessions with Mary Jane. I am your third of host, Jordan Freed.
I'm 2/3, Reena Ezra.
And I am the 3/3, Brendan O'Brien.
It's been a long, long time since we have been here together as one three-headed late night hump monster, and it's fitting that we are here for the final Sessions with Mary Jane episode of 2021 all together again, and with a very, very special guest, the hilarious, multi-talented, but we'll call him comedian, Ash Diggs.
Welcome.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Thank you so much for having me, you three-headed monster. You're beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Stop.
Well, your head is beautiful enough that it's like you have 3 heads, Ash.
Thank you. I was fishing for that specific
Well,
return.
you caught me red-handed in the water with a hook. Thank you for being here, Ash.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for having me. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know you are getting a challenge?
Yes, when y'all contacted me about the show, you mentioned I was going to get a challenge, but you did not say what the challenge was, and so I've been anxious ever since. So I'm ready to hear what it is.
Well, there's no reason to be anxious anymore because we're high on marijuana. But besides that, we're giving you a challenge that you should hopefully know well, because we actually met. We didn't meet directly through this, but we were both English majors at our alma maters of Tulane University in New Orleans.
Roll wave.
So I figured, why not give Ash a challenge with one of his passions, reading, and name as many Stephen King works as he could over the course of the episode.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's over the course of the episode. So
Yeah, just whenever you
toss
feel
them
like
out.
Yeah.
Toss them out
Cool.
whenever.
Yeah, interrupt us when
Alright.
you want us. Whenever a Stephen King work comes to mind, you just say it out loud.
Oh my god. Okay. Carrie. That's one. Just felt like there was a second there, and I'm gonna just start firing from the hip with them.
Yeah.
I think so. So be ready.
All right, we're ready.
Yeah, and also
Okay,
for
yeah.
our listeners at home, this is our first remote interview. Unfortunately, coronavirus has become a thing again. I guess it's the trend that keeps coming back, retro before 10 years, 20 years, 30 years pass. But Ash is joining us from Brooklyn. He just recently moved there from
Queens,
Burlington,
actually.
Vermont.
Queens.
Queens.
Yeah,
Oh,
Queens,
shit. Tell us
baby.
more. Tell us more.
Queens guy. So I thought I was moving to Brooklyn, and then I got here, and everything around me was like Queens, and the zip code returned to Queens, and I was like, oh, do I live in Queens? I thought I was moving to Bushwick, but I'm in Ridgewood, but I'm like right on the Bushwick border, so I'm kind of a tweener, but all of my paperwork says Queens, so I'm leaning into it. It's
Yeah.
Queens.
Okay.
There is that small pocket of New York where it is literally referred to as Queens, Brooklyn. So it sounds like that's probably where you ended
is that
up
a
at.
thing?
Yeah, there's some people who consider it's almost like the Central Jersey of New York City. Some agree that it exists, others say that it is a myth altogether.
Well, I mean, I think I might be right in the center of it, so I think it might be real.
Yeah.
It seems to be what I'm living.
Yeah, well, do you
Oh, I
take
love
the
it.
red pill or the blue pill? What's real? We don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know what's happening. Sorry. Poor Matrix
for
slipping.
that.
How was your move? How was the transition from Burlington, Vermont to Queens?
Honestly, difficult. It's been difficult because I feel like basically as soon as I got here, we kind of went back into, a lot of people went into like self-imposed lockdowns, like, COVID kind of, the Omicron, kind of was like, putting up 50 off the bench, and like, everyone I knew got COVID. I got COVID. I had booked a bunch of shows. They got canceled. And all through that, I was like trying to get my, I didn't sell any of my furniture in Vermont, so I like brought everything down in a U-Haul, and I was like driving this U-Haul through the city, and I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, this is crazy. I'm getting like honked at. People are screaming at me. I'm like, I'm sorry, this truck is big. These streets are small. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And so, yeah, it was crazy to just kind of go through all the stresses of moving. And I live by myself. So, and I was living by myself in Vermont too. So, I feel like a lot of times when you're moving out of a place, it's a pain in the ass, but at least if you have like roommates and stuff, there's kind of like a camaraderie, like, oh, we're all doing this shitty thing together. and it's just going to take as long as it takes. But, I moved out by myself, moved in by myself. I have friends here in the city, but like my sense of community, is really in Burlington. So to leave that and have my immediate attempts of finding new community here be stymied by a disease has been, it's been hard for real. But at the same time, every time I walk outside of my apartment in Queens, Brooklyn, I look to my left and I can see the Empire State Building, and I'm like, oh, that's sick. Like, that's pretty cool.
Well, we're here for you, as you know. Just come to Jersey.
Thank you.
But also, you have a companion, right? A dog.
Yes, I do have a dog. He is in the bedroom sleeping right now. So I've been quarantining with COVID and everything. I have a dog. His name is Boogie. He's 8. He's like a husky shepherd mix.
He's so cute. I've seen him on your social media. He's so cute.
He is. He's really cute. He's very, very energetic, and it's been really hard not being able to get him out as much since I've been quarantining and stuff like that. So today he's been like pretty good about it. Like, especially when I was sick, he would kind of like, come lay near me and, not be a huge pain. But today he was just like, dude, I'm going out of my fucking mind. We gotta get out of this apartment. He just like from like 6:30 this morning, I woke up, like paws on my face. He was like, we gotta go outside. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm following you. Let's do that. Went outside, good 45 minute walk. As soon as we come back in, he's like, we gotta go back out. We gotta go back out again. And just all day we've been going in and out and in and out. So finally he kind of fell asleep in the other room. And like, as soon as his eyes closed, I was just like, all right, we're going to close the bedroom door and just let that ride for as long as possible. But he's been doing pretty well. Vermont to New York is a big change for him for sure. But yeah, I don't know. He's adjusting pretty well, I would say. Thankfully, we're pretty close to a couple parks, so still able to get in that greenery and such.
Yeah.
What's the biggest change for you that you notice, like going from being someone who doesn't have a dog to being someone who lives with a dog?
Oh man, I think hopefully this doesn't sound too sad, but before I got a dog, I just realized I never, when I'm by myself, I just don't talk at all, which doesn't sound like too, that's not unusual, but during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we first really locked down, March 2020, for that 9 months until I got a dog, I was just I would just go 4 to 5 days without speaking or hearing another person's voice at the beginning of the pandemic, if you're not Zooming, if you're working from home and everything's emails. And it wasn't until I got a dog and I was just walking around hey buddy, or, just fucking talking to him like he's a little person.
Yeah.
I immediately realized, I was like, oh my God, the last 9 months of my life have been so quiet, Twilight Zone levels of quiet. So I think the biggest difference for me is that now I just am constantly talking as I'm walking around my house.
That's not, it's just a difference in interaction. You didn't have something else to interact with. I think that's very sweet though. I think that's that's probably really nice to have a companion throughout whatever you're going through right now. It doesn't, or even whenever, especially if it's somebody. Yeah, I mean, hey, if I could snap my fingers, turn Jordan into a dog, I will.
This is true. This is very true.
It's a great power. I don't think you have the responsibility to handle that power, Reena.
No.
She also wants me to be a hairless cat as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah, Ash, are you pro hairless cat or anti hairless cat?
Well, does anti mean killing them?
No killing here. We're on sessions with Mary Jane.
This is not a eugenics movement of cats.
I just have to make sure we're on the same page about definitions.
Right.
So I would say if anti is just not wanting them in my life, I would be anti, because they're kind of hairless cats to me, when you look at there's an optical illusion in a book and it's these lines are moving, but they're actually not moving. That's what hairless cats look like to me. I'm just it's a cat and I'm seeing it in front of me, but it's not, but it's not a cat.
That's fair. I get it. Yeah. No, I'm not offended. You can put cute sweaty. I found out they are like higher maintenance because we were looking for a cat, but then, hairless cats leave grease spots if you don't clean them often. So then I was just like, no, thank you. I was like, no, it's done. Now it's off the table.
That's a deal breaker.
It's not. Yeah, no, I can't. I'm sorry.
Grease spots.
Yeah,
they just like start sliding around.
Yeah, not pleasant.
No hair. Woo!
Not pleasant. Yeah, but besides animals, what about the difference in comedy? The scene in Burlington, Vermont versus New York, because I've never been to Burlington, Vermont, nor have I seen like the comedy culture or anything. So I know, but I've heard, such amazing things. And the theater also, if you want to talk about your, like you mentioned your community there, and they were doing like, your last show and everything, and it all looked really, really wonderful. What are the highlights, differences?
Yeah, well, I think, Burlington is such a, I'll never be able to say enough things about Burlington, Vermont, and especially the comedy community there. That's really, home base for that community is Vermont Comedy Club, and they do so much fantastic work for the city and for the comics there. But I think that one thing that Vermont is able to do, that Burlington is able to do because it's so small, is there's really a sense of solidarity and community in that, like being able to post in a Facebook group, hey, last minute, I need a ride to the airport, or like I need help like moving, or I need someone to babysit my kid. Like it's like, everyone is there for each other in so many more ways than just whatever our ties to the comedy club are. But they'll be there for you even if their only tie to you is the comedy club. So it's a really wonderful just community, just a lot of supportive and kind people. And I think that the thing that I noticed immediately about New York, having, I'm totally green. I have not accomplished anything here, but one thing I've noticed immediately is just how many, like, I'm sure there are communities just as strong as that here in New York, but there are so many of them, and there's everything's so split up, and even just certain bars have their own, those are like folks who just like you affiliate with like the place you do your shows at or your open mic at. Right. There's just so many more options. It's so decentralized. But I also say that as someone who is totally on the outside of it right now. So I also imagine that to a point, all those communities must overlap. So I'm sure once I'm sure someone 10 years into comedy here would hear me talking like this, and they'd be like, oh, he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's just not in the community yet. So. Well,
no, but I think that's fair though, because it's huge. We have a huge population in New York City. Yeah. Everybody's great. And there are many different small pockets. And for sure, I mean, the entertainment business in general, it looks very big, but then you're like, oh, everybody knows everybody at the end. And you're just like, then the world seems smaller. But yeah, what you say, Jordan, you would know. Well,
I was just going to say the New York comedy scene, like what you're saying with Burlington, I think it's like small enough that like it's a group community. And with New York City, it's just so big, and there's just so many like new faces every single day who are just like, hey, I just came into New York to do comedy. Yeah. And it's just like, hey, I'm the next guy who just came into New York to do comedy. That like people become very cliquey very quickly. And it like you have to know people in certain areas of New York and know the people who produce shows now. Like the indie alt shows are the place to be, and like if you don't know those people, then you never get booked, and then you literally just get left out of the New York comedy scene. It's like which is good though, because like it is better to have like vibes, like shows being determined by like, oh, this is gonna be for this type of audience, this is gonna be for these types of people.
Totally. It feels like that, that meme where it's like a bunch of different people at different lunch tables, and it's like, which lunch table are you going to sit at? Like the one with Tupac and Drake, or the one with Biggie and like the Island Boys or whatever?
Well, which table would you sit at then, Ash, given those examples?
What was the first one? I said Tupac and Drake.
Yeah.
I really hate Drake though. Drake is. I think I hate Drake because I know he is a part of me, and I think it's like a self-loathing thing. Because I loved Take Care was such a formative album for me, which now in 2021 is like the most toxic thing you can say aloud. Like that whole album is just about like a woman setting firm boundaries, and it's just a playbook of how to break them. And but, like at the time, I didn't realize that's what I was like listening to, and I just love to Take Care. I just have listened to even just I think on my Spotify Wrapped 2020. Take Care Deluxe Edition was on my top like 5 albums, and I was like, I can't share this slide. Like, I can't know that this is a part of me. And so I think that, it kind of feels like, I feel like someone with a deep, dark secret. Like I would, objectively, I feel like the Tupac, Drake, and I guess we are still talking about the lunch table thing. I was like, what the fuck are we talking about? The Tupac Drake table would seem objectively like the one you'd want to sit at over the Biggie and Island Boys table, but I think due to my own self-loathing, I couldn't do it. What do you guys think?
Well, speaking of lunch tables, right, which makes me think of school cafeterias, right, which makes me think of when you were a young fellow, which you're still young. I don't know why I said that. I just
Young Ash.
So young.
Yeah. Like the TV show Young Ash.
When you were a little tot, going to the beginning of your journey, first of all, where did you grow up? Was it in New York? Did you grow up in New York?
That was such a beautiful way to set up. Where'd you grow up?
At the dawn of time.
I had another thought, but then I was just like, wait, I gotta establish this first. Because I don't remember.
Both my parents were military, so I did not grow up in New York. I was born here, and I lived in the city for, I think, like 2 years. And then basically we kind of started moving down the East Coast, lived in North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Florida. And then I went to grades like 2 through 6 in Montgomery, Alabama, and then middle school through high school in Texarkana, Texas.
Wow.
So definitely in the South. Like I grew up mostly in the South.
How was that?
It's interesting. I feel like a lot of so I'm mixed. I'm biracial, which you know that joke where it's like a vegan, like a person who does CrossFit, and then something else like walk into a bar and who's gonna talk about their own thing first, like that kind of thing. I feel like biracial people should also be on that list. It is often the first thing I'd say in a lot of conversations, but my dad's black, my mom's white, and I feel like growing up in the South, I had a pretty good time overall, but I do think that moving around as much as I did, there were things that struck me as like ignorant or wrong or backwards about both like the people I was growing up around and also just like the adults that I was around. I feel like those things struck me kind of early on just because I had so many experiences to compare them to. I'm like, oh, like the white teachers that I have in Texarkana are treating me and a lot of people very differently than the black teachers I had in Alabama, and, things like that. But I also just hate getting older and learning more and more about life and the world, and then revisiting childhood memories and being like, oh my God, was that racism? Like, I didn't even like think of it. Like I have this memory of I was in like the 7th grade and I walked by this white teacher, and this feels like a scene from like Remember the Titans or something, but like I walked by this teacher and I was wearing an Auburn Tigers shirt because my dad went to Auburn, and the teacher said something to me and I said yep, and he was walking by me and he grabs my shoulder and he turns me around and he goes, I'm pretty sure they got manners in Alabama too, don't they? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, you better call me sir, boy. If you're giving me a yes, it better be followed by a sir. You'd think that y'all would know that by now. And I was just like, oh man, like, and that's like so burned into my brain. I can like see this dude's face. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, they're really stern with the rules in Texas. Like, oh, they're really. It just never, you know. There are just things I look back on where I'm just like, oh man, like there were some like shitty things that happen where you're just too young or innocent or naive to really realize that that's like what's happening to you. So, but at the same time, my best friend, in the world, DJ. I met him in Texas, and he's, I know a lot of really great people from the town that I grew up in. So, it's obviously not, there are stereotypes about just how bad the South can be, and a lot of those are overblown in certain ways because there's people in the South who want, who have political values and things like that. They're just so much more spread out in the South. So I think that people try to write off the South and assume that a lot of people have a lot of the same attitudes when it's not that. That's just not really true. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. Good and bad growing up in the South.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very interesting because it's given you many different perspectives. Of course, one, because you were traveling in many different areas. You weren't even stuck to one area, and not like you're saying, right. Not all of the South is. We just, we say reference and we say the South, but there are many different states, and they don't all have the same policy. They don't do the, do the same thing. And also, your education, there's just information you learn as you get older, which ignorance is bliss, for, a part of it. But when you're young and it's before you find out more truths about the world, and you're just like, this is what this means. And then it just, right. And then you just either get frustrated or upset or happy, whatever the thing is that you learned. But, do you feel that that's really framed your comedy?
I think that I have a couple jokes that definitely lean on the stereotypes of what people assume the South is like. But I think for the most part, I wouldn't really say so. I think that if anything, what growing up in the South has done to influence the way I look at comedy now, not even, it wasn't just the South itself, but I feel like re-examining a lot of the experiences I had growing up in the quote-unquote South, and looking at them from a bunch of different angles and realizing, connecting dots and being like, oh, that's what this was, mm-hmm. etc. I feel like now moving forward, I just try to look at everything like that, which, to a degree results in some anxiety and overthinking when I try to approach every situation by analyzing the shit out of it. But I think that really helps with my comedy, because I think a lot of the jokes that I write are stories. And, you can't make a story funny unless you can look at it from, multiple perspectives and point out, what's ridiculous or what's weird or this, that, and the other. So I think that the hindsight of living in the South and, the amount of analyzing I've done on that part of my life is just, it's affected how I look at everything. And
sure, yeah.
And that in and of itself has had a big impact.
Yeah.
When did you first start doing stand-up, Ash?
So I actually started, Jordan, you did that probably. Class, right?
I did not take the class. I was randomly connected with that dude. Because he was in my TV class that was a continuing studies class, which was I didn't realize that it didn't count for my major, but it was a TV class that was just all about Nielsen ratings and how TV is about advertising.
Dude, I know exactly. Oh my god. That's
wait. In Tulane specifically had a stand-up comedy course?
Yeah, so shout out to Professor Rebecca Mark. She's I don't think she's at Tulane anymore, but she is just one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. She's an amazing professor, and she offered a class called Women in Stand-Up Comedy. And I had a friend that I went to high school with that I ended up at Tulane with, who was in the class. And in high school, I used to make sketches and stuff that I would put on Facebook. Fast forward back to this friend of mine is in this stand-up class, and she hits me up and is like, hey, the final for this class, the final exam is to perform a 5-minute stand-up routine. Will you like help me write this? And I was like, oh, that's not something I've ever thought about or ever done, but yeah, that'd be fun. And so I helped her write like her final exam, in which who even knows. I don't even remember what we wrote, but I was like, oh, I should try to get into this class. And it was it was focused on, we started with like Mons Mabley and like Mae West, and we just like studied the entire history of like women in comedy in the US specifically. And it was just such a well-taught class, such a well-constructed class, but it also it peaked like I never was just like, oh, I should try stand-up. It was like, oh, stand-up is this really beautiful, awesome, important thing. That's something I would like to maybe do if I can. It
wow,
made stand-up
it like ignited
like
that flame. Wow.
Yeah, it totally did. And the final was a 5-minute set that you did in front of the class and any friends and faculty that were invited. So I did my set, and I remember it going really well. And there was this guy, I think his name was Alex Goldstein.
Alex Goldfinger, yeah. No.
Alex Goldfinger. Like, dude, my brain, I jumped to Goldfinger and I was like, no, that's not awesome.
It is. Because we're in a simulation, Ash.
But he was helping produce a festival that was happening in New Orleans, and he hit me up. He was at the class show, and he was like, hey, I liked your set. We're doing like a New Faces thing at this bar for the festival. Do you want to do it? And I was like, hell yeah, amazing. That sounds really good. And then as soon as I walked out of the room, I was like, oh my God, I'm insane. Like, I never want to talk in front of people. Like, that was so scary. What the fuck? And so actually the night before, I feel like the show was on like a Thursday. And the night before, I messaged him and I was just like, hey man, I'm so sorry. I have to drop out. Like, I can't do this. And he just responded, no, you have to. And, and it was the whole, like, I was like, oh, I'm like a sophomore and he's like a upperclassman. Like, I felt like I was back in high school. I was like, I guess I have no choice. But no, I went and did it, and it was awesome. And then from there,
Also, Ash killed very hard. I had to follow him, and nobody was watching.
Oh man, it's crazy. Yeah, and after that, I did stand up like very sporadically, like hit some open mics, but then started doing sketch with Jordan, and I feel like that's where, my, other than an open mic that Jordan and I produced, I kind of fell out of stand up in New Orleans. Like I never got like in touch with the scene there. So I was mostly doing improv and sketch after that. And then when I got to Burlington, it was just kind of like, okay, well, I don't know anyone here, so I'll start doing stand-up again, or focusing on stand-up because that's, what I can do by myself. So it was kind of an in and out. I feel like I've been like seriously doing stand-up for, probably the last 5 years now. And before that, I probably, my first, that class was probably 2014 maybe. So it's been, I feel like I've definitely been pursuing comedy in one way or another for about 7 years now.
What are your goals for the future? I mean, time to reflect. What are New Year's resolutions? Not like end goals, because obviously just however you would like to grow as an artist. What are some of the, if like any of them right now, some things that you'd like to hit?
Well, I think there's two main things. One being, I would really like to, even if it means doing like a whole bunch of shows and guest spots and kind of just making ends meet, I'd love to have comedy be, my job. Like that's all I have to do is get up and work on the thing that I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've immediately come to learn, just from the friends I have started making here in New York, is that is totally possible. Like it's a hustle, it's a grind, and you are like making ends meet, but you don't have to be on TV or touring the country to have comedy be your job. And it's interesting. It's interesting just knowing like, okay, that's something I can aspire to. Like maybe I won't be able to live in a 1-bedroom apartment forever, but like, if I have roommates I like, things like that, if there are things in my life currently that I would sacrifice if it meant that I could, sustain myself from comedy. And two, the other goal being to just fully integrate the person I am on stage with who I am off stage. Because I've found that, everyone's like doing a character to a degree when they're on stage. But I've found I've had like a really, I like take it too far, and here's an example. Like I feel like I compartmentalize on stage to the point where it's oftentimes detrimental to my personal life, because I'm just like separating, I'm making things different. And like an example of that is in 2017 I got a DUI, and it was like worst decision I've ever made. I wasn't actually, and it's just the whole thing's fucked. I wasn't actually driving my car. I had parked it. What seems to have happened is I got into my car and was like, oh man, I'm too drunk to drive, but I am already driving. I should stop immediately. So I just parked my car in the middle of the street and like perpendicularly, like I kind of turned it against.
Oh my God.
And I put my hazards on, and
thank God you put your hazards on.
I really think that I thought I was like in a parking lot.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that, but I was just in the middle of a street literally called Battery Street. On a hill. And I woke up, I came to in jail, and I was like, whoa, like, I wasn't even like sad at first. I was just truly flabbergasted. Oh my God. Like, am I for real in jail right now? Like what could have happened? And then it became incredibly sad after that. And this cop took me home the next day. And I had to like tell my girlfriend at the time, she was like, where were you? And I was like, don't worry, baby, I was not cheating on you. It was somehow worse, actually. It's actually much worse. I was arrested. But so it was like, and I had to get a lawyer, and I had been hoping to move to New York around that time, but I had to use all of my savings on a lawyer and like the legal fees. And you see those signs that say like DUI, you can't afford it. It's true, man. That shit set me back, and I totally deserved it. That was like such a stupid thing. Very lucky that no one got hurt, but a couple of weeks later, it really fucked up my life. I started writing a joke about it, and I started performing this joke about it. And it became like one of my best jokes. Like it was my closer for like a couple months. And it was like kind of a longer joke, and I was really proud of it, because I had, and this joke, I've done it in a couple different places, but again, like I am a brand new comedian in the scheme of things, so who knows if the joke is actually good or not, but it's done well for me so far. I was able to walk this line of talking about this really shitty thing I did, but people still liking me. And not only liking me, but laughing with me and even being on my side by the end of it. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that joke just, nightly almost. And then it got to the point where, oh, yeah, I got a DUI, but it's a joke. It's funny, it's hilarious that happened. And it's, if anything, my life's gotten better since, because look, I got this killer joke. And then a couple months later, my license got suspended. I had to go to court. And I just realized I had not actually processed the reality of the situation I was in at all. And it was so hard to deal with. And I just emotionally like really fucked me up. And it was like, I wasn't processing the emotions of this awful thing I did. that happened to me 6 months ago. I had somehow delayed it by 6 months, and that made it so much worse because it was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is not a joke. This is a real thing that happened. And instead of, at that point in my life, instead of realizing that and being like, that's not healthy, let's not, you can joke about stuff, but let's not like do that thing where someone beats a lie detector test because they believe the lie so much. Like, that's where I felt like I was going. And instead of pointing that out and being like, that's unhealthy, let's do the opposite, I was just like, oh man, I should just do this with everything in my life. I just put like everything on emotional layaway. I was like, oh, I can joke about it and I don't have to feel it until, you know, however long I can hold it off. Like stuff with like when I was going through a breakup, when I was like really, really struggling with like some drinking and drug stuff, like I was like, oh, as long as it's still funny, then it's not real. It's not really happening to me. It's just an experience that I can joke about. And yeah, I don't know. That's like, I think what I've realized is I can't fully be, I can't compartmentalize, or I have a tendency to compartmentalize to that degree on stage. And I feel like to combat it, I need to be my most as authentic as I possibly can be on stage. And like, if I'm going to talk about shitty things I've done, I need to own them and not just totally make them into jokes. So I think that's my second goal for comedy here is to just be, really integrate who I am on and off stage. So I'm not constantly jumping back between two people and two lenses.
Yeah,
sure.
That's cool. I feel like that actually shows like kind of like the maturity of a comic, because even if you think about like all like a lot of the greatest comics, like a lot of them did start off kind of like really trying to highlight this persona, and that's at some point you're you just like learn to embrace like your like the realness of your life and finding still finding the humor in that, but just in a more connected way, right?
Totally. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, and I feel like I've already seen the ways in which I'm going to be able to continue working on that, like the open mics I've been going to. You see like 30, 40 people a night, and just by virtue of that and people being funny, you hear a lot of the same stuff being talked about, and it just, it doesn't mean you can't talk about that thing too. You just gotta like, okay, what is your most unique take? Like, what is why do I want to hear you talk about that thing?
Right.
And it's like, okay, the more of your true self you bring on stage, the more access you get to the kind of comedy that in theory would eventually set you apart. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we can all agree that your voice is definitely unique in comedy in general and for stand-up. Yeah, well, also because we know you like as a, like personally, and you're a really, really awesome person. But it is like you're saying, when everyone's kind of like barking the same thing in a whole crowd, and it's just like, all right, well then we don't need somebody to say the same thing about the same topic, about the same perspective, and the blah 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 blah. So I just think it's really cool your own personal growth that you've just shared, and like the other stuff that you're continuing to conquer, because it's only natural. And I think just as far as like psychologically, our brains to do like self-defense will disassociate ourselves from whatever the event happened into our life, so we don't have to process it because we all had to and we were all in like the same boat when we had to quarantine. Like our minds just drifted off and started self-reflecting and self-analyzing on all these past months and years of our own life baggage, and we're like, oh gosh, like now what is this? We didn't know we were opening the door to the abyss, but there it goes. Yeah. So, but I think that's splendid, because I think what you're doing is way better than like, comedians who've been, or, now cancel culture, but guys who are like, oh no, that's not really me, that's a character, when they've done Me Too-y stuff. Like that's really, because that's what I thought when you said in the beginning, and it's like, when people hear like, being an authentic self, and this is not just like a character, but then I feel like some comedians are like, oh no, but that was a character on stage. This is the real me. And it's like, you're spewing the same bullshit. Like, what?
20 characters already. They're all awful pieces of shit.
yeah. But I think it's also like people are connecting with that. Like people don't want the shiny, fake, bullshit on the surface. Like they want to like see and hear. They're like, oh, this person is a real person. Like they're being honest with us. They're like, I don't think that should be an expectation. I don't think everybody has to unload that. I think it's very proper and respectable for people to keep a separation with their, because it's your private life, whatever is in your private life versus whatever public persona you want to put out there. But I think people are really connecting with that now on social media and whatever, just because, people are so physically distant. Their way of connecting is like I want to go through your layers. Like, I don't want to just see this. People just don't want fake anymore. So I think that's, and I think that's, and it's tough. It's fucking hard. Like, everyone who's gone through their own experiences, like the bad ones, it's nice that you could, if they, see you and they hear you and they could be like, oh, wow, he has this perspective that kind of like uplifted it, brought it out of the dark, shed some light on it. I can do that now to mine. Like, it's kind of a teachable moment, and it is therapeutic for other people. So that's my 2 cents.
Ash, for someone who has never, because we also want to get into like you as a musician too, because we know that you have like a pretty strong musical background. To segue these comedy into the music. For someone who's never performed live on stage, how do you best describe the feeling it feels to be on stage performing for people?
Like stand-up or music?
Both. Both.
Yeah, for someone who's never done it, what would you?
Sure.
Yeah, how would you describe
man.
that to them?
It's kind of just like, oh man. That's hard to do.
Great job, Brandon. You used such a hard question.
I give him the stumpas. This is 16 minutes with marijuana.
Darn it! Why didn't we name our thing that?
Next time. Next podcast.
I think the feeling of going on stage is, if you've never done it before, it is similar to being at like a dinner with people. Like, say you're at dinner with like your friends and they brought, like, your friend brought their friends that you're not friends with. And so like y'all are sitting there and you're kind of doing the whole like, oh man, are they better friends than I am? Or like, where am I? Like, what am I? And when you say something that makes someone you don't really know that well genuinely laugh, like when it kind of catches you off guard, but you're like, oh man, I got you. Like, that's like a real, you're not just being polite with that laugh. Which is kind of like such a small delight that you get to feel from time to time. That's what being on stage feels like to me for comedy. Like when it works out, it's just like, oh man, like I made you laugh. Like I just connected with you. Like, oh, and it's kind of a small feeling. Like it's kind of this intimate, like just this beautiful little moment, but you get to do it 10, 15, 20, 30 times at once. So, and almost now, I feel like the further I get into that analogy, it's kind of starting to sound like a drug. I'm just like, you just take a little bit.
Microdosing comedy. I love that description. That's so good. I am just going to interject in here, just revisit. Are there any Stephen King works you just want to add to that? Yeah.
We said it. Let's do Salem's Lot, Lizzie's Story, Gerald's Game, 1922, Bag of Bones, Under the Dome. Let's see. Oh no, The Langoliers.
Do you have a favorite?
My favorite is probably Bag of Bones was the first Stephen King book I read, and that one was near and dear to my heart for a while. I think my favorite is probably Pet Sematary, which I actually don't know if I said yet. But
no, you did.
Oh, did it? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, Pet Sematary is just I felt so physically ill after reading that book. Like, it is one of the most vile, scary things I've ever read. And it is, to this day, the only book to invoke such an intense reaction. I just thought it was so, like, well read or well done.
That's incredible. What is your attraction to, because we know you have a horror movie podcast. What is your attraction to horror?
So it really started with my dad. He really likes horror movies, and my mom hates them. And we had like a guest room with a TV, and my mom would be like, "If you guys are gonna watch horror movies, you got to go do it in the guest room." And so my dad would take me into the guest room, and I don't know if I wanted to or not, but I would always end up watching them. And it got to a point where he would always fall asleep during the movies. I have this really vivid memories, like we were like sleeping in this bed, and I was up against the wall, and he was on the outside, and he'd be like, "Oh, you want to watch this horror movie?" And I'd be like, "If you stay up, I will." And he'd always be like, "Yeah, okay, I'll stay up." And so he'd put it on, and he'd put the remote on the bedside table, which is on his side of the bed, and then 20 minutes into the movie, he would inevitably fall asleep before anything actually scary happened. So I would just be watching this horror movie by myself, and just like, I can't fall asleep because the scariest things I've ever seen are happening in front of my eyes, and I would be like pinned to the wall, wanting to try to get the remote without waking him up, but I couldn't because it was over his body. So I would just end up watching these movies. And I started.
I love how that's what was stopping you. Yeah. That is the obstacle.
That's the horror movie of the horror movie.
Don't wake up, Dad. Wait, I'm sorry. How old are you?
Oh man, I must have been. This was like when we lived in North Carolina and then in Alabama, so probably around like first grade age. Like,
oh my god!
So yeah, pretty young.
It's like 6 years old.
Yeah. Wait, which kind of horror movies get you the most, scares wise?
Like a good haunted house, because I don't not believe. You know, so
fair, yeah, I get that.
I remember one of the first movies I remember being scared of was, it's actually a miniseries, a Stephen King miniseries, but it's not a book, but he wrote it for TV. But he wrote the screenplay. It's a work, so maybe that counts. Cool. It's called Rose Red, and it was about like this haunted manor, and it was kind of like a Clue situation. And I'm saying that, and I don't know, I haven't actually seen or played Clue, but like a bunch of people go. It's what I'm assuming is a Clue situation. Like a bunch of different people show up to this manor because a distant relative, like, promises them money or like something like that, and so all these different people have to show up to the manor and they have to stay, and there's like this scene of all these hallway doors closing, and this guy like reaching out to stop one of the doors from closing, and it slams on his fingers, and all of his fingers come off. And I was just like, it just scared me so much, and my dad was asleep, and I was like so scared, but then I was just like, oh, that was also kind of sick though. And that was just like a switch. It just happened one day. My brain was just like, all right, we got to evolve. We got to make them like this because it's not going to end anytime soon. And so now I do. I love a good haunted house movie. Yeah.
Those are good. Yeah. And what is the podcast called?
The podcast is called Get Out the House. We took a little sabbatical because one of our co-hosts was finishing up grad school, and the other just had a baby. So I was like, guys, when can you record? And they were both like, we cannot. We simply cannot. But yeah, it's called Get Out the House. It's on any platform you get podcasts, and basically me, as I graciously mentioned earlier on, I am mixed, and one of the other co-hosts is black and the other one is white. And basically the focus of the podcast is, I feel like it's pretty common for people to joke about, like, oh, like, why are characters so stupid in horror movies? And obviously that's done because that's, you know, how you can't write a movie. Sometimes people got to be dumb for a movie to work. Sometimes that's got to happen. But we thought it'd be really fun to take that step further, and me and my friend Zanny, we interview our white friend Nick and make him defend all the stupid things that white people do in horror movies.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, thanks. And it's been really, really fun to do, and also just like an incredible, as I'm sure you guys know, but it's just like doing a podcast with friends. It's just an incredible way to stay connected and like continue building your friendship, because like you just, you know, you say stuff, you learn stuff that you didn't know, and it's just, yeah, it's awesome, man. We've been lucky enough to do pretty well too. Like it's getting people are listening, cool. And I think it's pretty funny. So I love it.
Yeah. Ash, are there any like going back to the horror movies? Are there any because you know music plays a pretty significant role in horror movies, both in like the suspense and like just like, the overall tone. Are there any movie scores that like stand out to you? Ooh. Ones that like kind of like or just like really did the job?
Solid question.
Yeah, you know what's a recent one that I really loved? Well, recent, I think this was like 2017 or 2018 now, but the movie Raw. Did you guys ever see
Yo, I love Raw. Oh, that's so good.
And I guess it is a horror movie. Like it is, I mean, it's scary what happens in it. And I just thought it just, that score to me had like the feelings of kind of like of a happier movie, like of an art house indie, kind of like an A24 or like a Wes Anderson. No, not even Wes. Who am I trying to think of? But you know, just like it felt indie, yeah, but it felt comfortable, and that juxtaposed with like the terrifying things that were happening in the movie, I thought was I remember listening to it for a while afterwards. But I also, you know, love the classics too, of just like The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Is there a better one? I mean, I'm sure maybe, but I don't know, man. It's pretty perfect.
Yeah. Go.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you have anything spooky happen to you in New Orleans? A very spooky,
oh my God,
unique city.
Dude. I had one experience that felt strange to me. There was a night. It was like a Saturday night. And it must have been, I remember that Buku Fest was happening, which is a music festival. I only remember it because all of my like roommates went, and I didn't for whatever reason. I think maybe I couldn't afford it or something like that. But I just remember that's why I was by myself. And it was also, I'm giving away clues of how actually traumatic this memory is for me, because all the specific things I remember, but
so true.
Yeah,
so true.
That resonates.
It was also the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt had just come out. Like, it also must have been a Friday night, actually, because that's when Netflix puts his stuff out. But
I love the details.
That came out, and I remember thinking, oh, I really want to watch this. But I was like kind of restless, and I was, you know, when like it kind of first hits you in college that you're like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Like I can just fucking walk. I can leave at like 1 a.m. and just walk outside. And it was kind of one of those. I just got on a bike, and I don't remember like what angst I was feeling, but I was like, I'm gonna go for a bike ride, and I'm gonna watch this happy Kimmy Schmidt show. So that seems funny, and yeah. So I go get on my bike, and I end up going pretty far past down to the Fly for Jordan. I guess I don't know if y'all visited New Orleans, but it's like this park that's probably like a 10-ish minute bike ride from campus. But it goes up to there's access to the levee from it, and you can there's a path that just follows along the levee, and it just kind of goes and goes for quite a while. So I biked to that, and I was just kind of going, listening to music, and I realized there's like one other person on the path, like way ahead of me, and they're far enough ahead of me that I can't tell if they're like moving away from me or if they're coming towards me. And as I was getting kind of closer, I was like, oh, this person isn't biking, they're running.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, like that's like, I was like, you know, I'm on a running path, like sure. And then I was like, oh, it's 2 a.m. But I was like, well, but I'm biking at 2 a.m. So maybe it's just someone else. But then like,
I love how your brain automatically puts logic into factoring and be like, oh, this is how this can make sense.
Yeah. And as I'm like biking closer, you know how there's a difference between someone who is running because they're on a run and someone who's running like they're being chased by something.
Oh my God.
There's like a little less finesse.
Yeah. Yes. Oh jeez.
I noticed as I was biking closer, I noticed that's how the running. Like,
oh my God.
they're like hauling ass. And I was like, I couldn't tell. I was like, had they been run, and they were still just far enough away that I was like, were they running the whole time, or did they break into a run? Like, are they running towards me, or is something behind them? And so I end up, I'm getting really, really paranoid, and the person's probably like, I don't know, a good still like 200 feet from me, like far enough away that I was like, okay, I'm going to turn my bike around and go the other way, because this is scary. And so I'm biking the other way, and I'm kind of hauling ass, and I look back, and dude's just gone. Like, and it's a straight path, and I look back, and dude's just gone. And so, like, realistically, he probably, like, took a tumble off the side, or he, like, you know, of his own volition, like, went down the side, or like something like that. But I was just very upset by it. I was like,
wow.
I literally started to slow down, and then was like, what the fuck are you doing, you fucking idiot? Like, why would you slow down right now? Like, keep going. And I hauled ass all the way back to my apartment, to my apartment, to the fucking dorms, get in, sit down, all the lights are on, and I start watching Kimmy Schmidt, but I'm like shook. I'm like, I'm feeling really like, I'm like, oh, that was super fucking weird, like just really strange. Where'd that guy go? And why was he running like that? And I just couldn't sleep. And then I get a text from one of my roommates, and he's just like, yo, you want to get a big pancake? Because our dining, or one of the, there was a diner on our campus that did like these humongous pancakes. And so I was like, yeah, sure, man. Actually, that would be really great. I could really use, would love to talk to somebody right now. And so remember this, like a music festival. So everyone's like getting back to campus around this time. So we get to the diner, and it's packed, and I'm kind of like shook, and it's like 4 a.m. at this point. And I start trying to tell my buddy about it, and he's like, wait, is this going to be a scary story? And I was like, honestly, yeah, kind of. And he was like, you have to stop. I'm tripping really hard on acid right now, and you can't tell me.
Oh, yeah, that would have not.
And so
been
then
good.
I just had story blue balls, and I was just like, suddenly surrounded by all these people who were drunk and happy, and I was like, I feel like I just saw a ghost, maybe. And like,
man.
I was just on such a different planet than everyone else. And then I finally went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and my buddy was like, yeah, I didn't sleep last night because of the acid, and I watched all of season 1 of Kimmy Schmidt. It's pretty good. So then I did too.
Well, thank goodness you weren't one of those stupid people in horror movies, and you talked yourself out of it, and you're like, don't stop, keep going.
Yo, for real.
Yeah, oh my God.
Because, maybe
felt
that,
so stupid. I was like, what are you doing?
I'm so curious. What could that have been?
It was so strange. It was so strange.
Yeah. Do you generally believe in like the existence of like ghosts and like the afterlife and spirits? Like what are your thoughts on those topics?
So here's the thing. I feel like there is so much about the world, about our planet, the ocean, space, that we are nowhere near fathoming, that I just don't feel like you can say there's no way there's no ghost. You know, like I just feel like, because maybe it's a science thing. Like maybe our souls are, neutrons or something. I don't know what.
Our souls are neutrons.
Thanks, Jimmy.
But I just, I don't know. I feel like there is so much about our world that we. And maybe ghosts, maybe they don't exist in like the way that we like traditionally, like what we think a ghost, what we would define a ghost as. But whether that's something to do with like time travel or, I don't know. I think there's so much that we cannot know and do not know that, and there are so many stories of people who have truly unexplainable things happening to them. That probably do have a quote unquote scientific explanation. I sound crazy right now. That have a scientific explanation, but maybe it's just scientific in a way that we cannot fathom or understand currently.
I agree. I don't think it's that mind-boggling because, like, basic I mean, law of physics or thermodynamics. I mean, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So what happens is it gets transferred. It's in a different form, and we just don't know what that is yet. So that backs it up. Like that's just there's no, and that also too, like you're saying, so many people have so many cases or incidences that they like put on record or recall or whatever, and it's like, what are like all these people just getting punked? Like,
yeah, no,
like come on.
I think it's like a point that like that human beings like can only think how human beings think. So it's like as much as we want to imagine, we can think how like animals or like other kind of creatures think. Like we don't because you only have the capacity of a human brain.
Yeah,
exactly, dude. That's just like. So do you guys know the Fermi paradox? Or have y'all fuck with aliens?
Oh, we need to hear this. Yeah, I don't know this.
Basically, the Fermi paradox. It's kind of like this. The bare bones of the theory is just this scientist who was just like, he's like, the universe is so vast and so huge and so wide sprawling that there's no way that intelligent life out there doesn't exist.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, why don't we know about it? Like, why have they not contacted us? Why haven't, and so it's just like that paradox of they must be out there, but we can't, but they aren't. Yeah. But why? And there's like a whole bunch of different like potential like theories and things like that. But one that I find so interesting is like the analogy of like an ant bed by a highway. Because so like if we were ants in an ant bed and there was like the busiest highway in the world right beside us, we don't even acknowledge that it exists because it is so far beyond our means of understanding. Mm-hmm. Like we are ants and we build our house out of dirt. Like we look up at that and it's just like, what is that? I don't know. I guess it's maybe part of the sky because I just can't imagine it's anything else. And so one of the theories behind like why we haven't contacted intelligent life is that maybe we're like ants in an ant bed, and there is just like the intelligent life is just so far ahead of us that we're not there yet. We can't even see it.
Yeah, I can see some. I would believe. Yeah, I believe that there's some truth in that. Also, because for our capabilities, it being so beyond, like we have to keep order. If there's stuff that's just so overwhelming to us, then it is complete chaos. We won't be able to take it. We can't. People can't. People are flat earthers, for Christ's sake. Yeah. Like people don't even believe actual like the earth is round. Like people can't even fathom real shit that's already been proven. We're a sensitive species for sure. Yeah, we're fragile. And especially now, no, we don't want to take any new stuff on. Are you kidding? We can't. We mustn't. It's too dangerous.
Yeah. Ash, do you have a quote-unquote spirit animal that you think maybe you were in a past life or that you would be in a future life?
Oh, man. I guess... Wait, that I think I was? Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then what you would like to be.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I was maybe... I hope I'm just high, but I'm like, do I know any animals?
Is broccoli an animal?
Is man an animal? No, I don't know. I feel like I was maybe something like a like a turtle, but like one of the like ones that'll bite. Like I feel like because right now I feel like I mostly go with the flow. But like I can be kind of pissy. Like I do feel like I've learned that about myself. Like I can be kind of a moody bitch. And so I feel like that's a lot of times like there are two kinds of turtle videos, right? That you see on the internet. It's like one of like a really, really old cute one, or it's one that it's just like they hold up like a watermelon to it and it like bites the watermelon in half. Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of like where maybe I'm just describing my bipolar disorder, but that's like me these days. So maybe a turtle, and then I think I'd like to be. I think I'd love to be a sloth, man. They seem to have it made. I mean, like you got to be living good if there's like a deadly sin named after you. It's like, no, you can't sloth.
True. Yes.
Which came first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Brendan?
Oh, I'm dog all the way. I know.
You were a dog, or you're gonna be a dog?
I definitely think I was a dog before, because sometimes
that makes sense.
Yeah, I just I feel like sometimes like dogs are like, yo, why do you seem like a dog to me? Why do you seem like a dog to me? Because I'm clearly not a dog to them. And then at some point, I'm able to convince them that I was a dog, and then I feel like they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I don't get it, but I get it.
Oh, wow.
And I hope that I am reincarnated back into a dog at some point in my life. So I'm going for that Brendan sandwich with dog bread. Yeah.
Wow.
I just want to alternate dog, human. I feel like it'll give me some good takes on the world.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I was a bird.
Yeah, which kind of bird?
Definitely a bird.
Yeah, what kind?
I don't know what kind, but I'm have like sporadic energy like that sometimes. I could be like up at people's like face, and then also just like my body movements or how I pivot, and I'm like whatever, like maybe a hummingbird, something small. I'm definitely small, or like packed with power. Yeah. But I would like to be transfer my energy into lightning.
That's awesome.
I don't want to kill anybody though.
Right.
I don't want to, but I mean, maybe that's not up to me. I don't even know. Like, what if lightning, like, they don't do it on purpose? They're just like, wrong person there, wrong place, wrong time.
It's a sneeze, it just happens.
But I would, like, yeah, that'd be crazy. What is that like? That's like, like a 30 times what, like, an orgasm is. Like, could you imagine? Yeah. I mean, just... Because
that's what performing live feels like.
Oh, very nice.
Jordy, what about you?
I feel like I probably, I don't know, maybe a bear or something, because I like to hibernate in the winter.
You want to be a bear, or you were a bear?
Was a bear. Yeah, I don't like being outside at all. In the winter. I would just like to have eaten all summer and then get to sleep.
Good life. Also a good life.
Yeah, also I like honey.
Those are the two.
Also, I feel misunderstood sometimes.
Oh.
You think you
like a bear?
Yeah, I feel like bears are nice people.
Not bears, though. They're not people.
What?
Yeah,
they're nice bear people. Yeah.
Just clarifying for the folks who are listening.
Like, are they bears? I don't know. Yeah.
People in bear suits.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good name for a band. Yes. Wow. Yes. Actually, speaking of bands, Ash, you are a musician. You have had some experience with music. Would you mind telling us about how you first got into music?
Yeah, sure. I always I started writing like raps and lyrics down when I was in like middle school. And I would do this super cool thing where I would download popular songs, remove like the rap verses. Like usually it was like a pop song that had like a random rap verse, like when like an Ariana Grande song has like a Big Sean verse. I would download it, take out like the Big Sean part, and I would like record my own like verse over that, cool. And then I'd like show it to like 2 or 3 people on my iPod Shuffle and be like, that's me, do you like it? Like, is it good?
Who are the people that you first showed your music to?
Just like really close friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 of my best friends at the time, I remember being like, you can't make fun of me, but this is me. And actually both times they were like, oh, this like isn't the worst thing I've ever heard. And basically I never fucked with music again after that. But I was always around like very musical people. All my roommates like played guitar and made beats and played piano and stuff like that. So I was always around like people, quote unquote, jamming and stuff like that. And then when I moved to Vermont, I through a mutual friend met this guy who was a drummer in a band that was breaking up, and I just kind of. I don't even know particularly why, but I was just like, hey, dude, if you ever want to, like, fuck around sometime, I write lyrics. Would love to, like, maybe hang out and, like, play some music or something. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, that'd be great. And then he messaged me a couple times, a few weeks, over a couple weeks. And he was just like, I invited this person, and what kind of music do you like? And let's exchange, like, music tastes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this seems kind of intense. And then I got to his house for our first rehearsal, and he was like, hey, it was him, and there were like 6 other people in the space, and he was like, yo, so this is the band. And I was like, the what? And he was like, this is our band. And I was like, oh, have we started a band? And he was like, yeah, man, I thought we could start a band. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, also, we talked, and we think your last name would be a really cool name for the band. And I was super uncomfortable with that at first because like you can't, no one believes that I didn't name the band. I'm telling you guys this story now. I know I'm just have to live with this. No one will ever believe that I did not name the band after myself.
John Bon Jovi has the same issue. He says the exact same thing. So.
So we just kind of like started, we just were fucking around, and then that guy worked at a ski resort, and he was like, hey, I got us a gig in a month to play for an hour at this like New Year's Eve thing. And I was like, dude, we barely have like one song. What are you talking about playing for an hour a month from now? And we ended up, we wrote like 10 songs and we banged it out and we did the show and like it went well. And then we just kept getting booked for stuff, and it was like, it just kind of happened. I was like, oh shit, I'm fucking in a band. And it was really cool. It was so different from stand-up. Like, I was super uncomfortable in that world. Like, I just assumed I'd be fine on stage because I was fine on stage doing stand-up, but it's just such a whole different thing. And you also don't have the defense mechanism of comedy unless you're like explicitly like, writing a funny line in a song. But everything else was like, you're being pretty, honest, if you choose to be. And, it was a really cool experience. It was really amazing to be able to, to play live music. I mean, that was crazy. That was like, I don't even know how I would describe that. Like, it was so different from stand up. It was very, we played at college once, like towards the end of our time together. We played at a college, I think it was St. Lawrence University it's like upstate New York, I think. But we played there, and it was just one of those, it was a venue that was on the campus, but it was one of those things where it's like the only thing to do. So it was packed, like fucking crazy packed. And I was just like, oh my God, like these people didn't come to see, like some of them came to see us. Most of them just came here to do something, but they're like on board. Like they're down with this. And like doing that show was just fucking insane. Like I was like, oh, I see how this kills people. And I was playing at like a very small school in upstate New York. And I was like, oh energy. Man, like, yeah. I was like, I couldn't imagine being actually successful in this field because I don't know if I could handle that. It was really, really incredible. And we got like fairly popular in Burlington, which was really cool. And having people, this was also because we didn't have a huge catalog, but like seeing people like singing the words to your songs, like, man, that was fucking nuts, dude. That was really crazy. So,
do you?
Yeah, and that's. Oh,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was literally just gonna say that's kind of how I got in and out of music.
And that that experience like came to a close, right? An end. That band's not producing any more music. Like, are you still writing on the side? Like, do you want to do any more raps or you're like, I mean, obviously you said earlier you're like on the stand-up path. Like that is obviously what you're doing in the forefront. Okay.
No, I think I would love to. I think that it's something that I definitely don't miss. I miss the outlet, I guess. I definitely miss the outlet. And I also, there were like things in the band that like, just like directions, the type of music that we were making, I like really, really loved. But there's always been a part of me that kind of would love to experiment with like, like more traditional hip hop beats and stuff like that. And like try out that avenue. Because the people I was in the band with were like such incredibly talented musicians that I like, sometimes I didn't like know how to communicate with them, about, cause, which led to me feeling like I didn't always, not even that I didn't get the input because everyone always gave me 100 chances for input. I just didn't know how to say what I wanted out of some of the music.
It seemed like there was like a language barrier.
Right, it's true, and it's 100% just because they were, I was so out of my depth playing with a lot of those folks. I think that if I went back to music, I would want to kind of like find someone, like link up with someone like beats wise or producer wise that like, you know, that I really is either like in a similar place as me or like is open to working with people who are like, you know, just kind of fucking around on the side. Like, I don't think it's ever something I'd want to like full on pursue.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But it is, yeah. It's always a fun hobby.
Yeah. Ash, if you could control the soundtrack to your life, what kind of artist would be playing on the headphones of your world as you're walking around during the day?
Oh, man. As I'm walking around during the day. I think it's super moody to say, but it might be the 1975. They're one of my favorite bands, but they also have a wide enough array of sounds that I feel like I feel like if I'm walking around, if the 1975 is the soundtrack, like I can hear some low acoustic, moody, sad boy shit, but I can also hear like some big, like some choir choruses and some horns and some uplifting shit. And yeah, I do feel like oftentimes at my core I am kind of a moody little boy sometimes. So I need music that can meet me in the middle there sometimes. What about you?
Oh,
that's a hard ass question.
No,
Hans Zimmer.
No, yeah, strictly Hans. When the Hans ends, I hit repeat and play Hans again. No, I definitely. So one time, someone at college asked me, they're like, "Oh, like Brian, what kind of music do you listen to?" And I like gave it a list of musicians, and she's like, "That sounds like the playlist called Sad Girl Music." So I definitely am on the same wavelength as you. Yeah, no, because you know what? I like the analogy you made of, but I like the idea that like it feels good sometimes to have music that meets you in the middle. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it, where like there's some music that is just like, I'm gonna hit you with everything and you have no input, you have to just defend yourself, and you're like embracing it, and other ones where you have to like really like stretch yourself emotionally in order to like get to the place they are because they're like very restrained in some way. But I like the idea of music that like it kind of pulls you towards them by also like going towards you a little bit too. I feel like because like you know that feeling when you like listen to a song and it just clicks with you immediately, and you're like this is my new favorite song. Like that's kind of what it feels like, I think, sometimes. So absolutely. So shout out to Regina Spektor, man. She's the queen of the sad girl.
Oh, I love Regina Spektor.
Yeah. So.
Oh my god. God bless her.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ash, before we wrap things up, do you have any more Stephen King works that you want to throw down on the list? And also, would you like to know how many you have so far?
Oh yeah, how many do I have so far?
11.
11. Oh man. Let's throw down Rage. Let's throw down The Gunslinger. Let's throw down The Long Walk. Let's throw down The Green Mile. Let's throw down Mr. Mercedes. Let's throw down oh man, what else should we throw down?
Yeah.
I think that's what I got for now. That's
cool.
what I got.
Wait, real quick, are there any adaptations of Stephen King's work that particularly stand out to you as ones that you really enjoy the transfer over?
Oh man. This is one more to add to the list, but Dr. Sleep, the Mike Flanagan directed and I believe edited the Dr. Sleep movie that is a sequel to The Shining, but Stephen King famously hated Stanley Kubrick's Shining. He felt like he missed the point of it, which I agree with in some ways, but he always hated it, and he wrote Dr. Sleep in like 2013 as a direct sequel to the book, his book, The Shining, but it completely disregards like anything. So like if someone had only seen the movie of The Shining, some things would not make sense to them about Dr. Sleep. Yet Mike Flanagan, his adaptation of the book also serves as a direct sequel to the movie. Like it keeps all the main things that happened in the movie while also honoring all the narrative stuff that Stephen King was kind of reinforcing in Dr. Sleep as like, hey, this was the point about The Shining. Mike Flanagan somehow stay true to both. Like he recreates scenes from The Shining, but he doesn't de-age anyone. He like casts people that just looked like the old actors, which is so much better than fucking de-aging people. Yeah. And he like matched the color palettes, and he rebuilt all these sets, and he just did so much to make it a true sequel to The Shining, the film, while also somehow staying completely true to the narrative of the book. That I think it's like, and Stephen King loved it himself, and I think it's probably my favorite adaptation of a Stephen King work. Yeah. There's a lot of good ones, but that one really is just fucking insane.
Good pick. Yeah, it's pretty bold that he cast someone to play Jack Nicholson, and you're like watching it, and you're like, that looks like Jack Nicholson. Like, it actually kind of looks like Jack Nicholson.
I absolutely bought it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very bold move. I was like, oh, Mike, you crazy bastard.
Well, Ash, you crazy bastard. You got 18 Stephen King works. That's quite an accomplishment.
Ooh, nice. Solid.
Yeah, so great job. Thank you for joining us, Ash, on this lovely day of sessions. We went all over the place, everywhere from comedy to the ghostly beyond. Do you want to plug any place that people can find you, anything you have coming up, or anything you just want to make sure people really know that is important to you?
Sure. You can find me on all the socials at @ashdiggs_. You can go listen to Get Out the House, my scary movie podcast. It's streaming on anything. We're going to be back with new episodes in early 2022. And other than that, I'm just, really grateful that COVID didn't stop us from still having this session. I really loved talking with y'all, and just happy to be here with y'all. Yeah.
Also, we'd be remiss if we didn't say that on the Late Night Hump Patreon, you can watch Ash Diggs performing in Jordan Freed's Knock, which was produced actually like earlier during COVID times, and Ash is phenomenal and funny, and it's about a group of stoners that hear a knock at the door, and in true stoner fashion, they can't decide who's going to answer the door, and also every other possible divergent topic that you can go on as a stoner.
Yes, thanks so much for being on the show, Ash, and get well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, y'all.